guys, welcome to another episode of the e-commerce lab by Ecomcy, the place of everything related to Amazon FBA, private label, and e-commerce. My name is Vincenzo Toscano, your host, founder, and CEO of Ecomcy, and today we'll bring you another special guest. His name is Aaron, and he's the co-founder and CEO of Ecom Stores, where they specialize on helping you find basically an alternative when it comes to selling on Amazon. They find the perfect store for you of central accounts, and also allow you the opportunity to sell your store and your brand. So it's a very interesting business model. And on top of that, Aaron is gonna basically showcase how you can leverage his company to basically dive into this world of selling on Amazon. So Aaron, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for coming. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, doing very well. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. I know we started basically a conversation and actually partnership now as of last week, and I was very impressed with what you guys are doing in the space. I think, having the opportunity to start selling with already an established Amazon store is definitely something that's becoming a hot topic lately. It's mainly because some people doesn't really want to go through all the hassle of having to open an Amazon account, or some people just want to get a business that's basically already up and running, and even the opportunity of selling your account. That's a big opportunity, because we also had this conversation that a lot of sellers just basically stop selling, or they just don't know what to do with their account. And let's be honest, their account more than ever is an asset. Like we know how difficult it's getting some in specific categories to get approved and things like that. So it's gonna be interesting to dive into the topic today. However, before we jump into that, Aaron, I want to talk a little bit about you. I do that with all my guests. Like, I wanna learn more about who's Aaron, how you jump into the e-commerce space, and what made you basically found your company. And then from there, of course, we can dive into the topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So I actually started off on Amazon when I was living in Australia. So many moons ago. It was 2013, and I was working in the mines out in some of the hottest temperatures in the world. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to earn a living. So come across, first I started to learn about affiliate marketing and so forth. Then I got an email promoting an Amazon course. Back then it was called Amazing Selling Machine. It was one of the first big courses that was promoted. And then I just dived straight into that and launched my business. After 4 months, we started, it took off, and things were a lot different back then. But it took off. We was doing, 40, 50,000 a month after month 3 or 4. And then I kind of just handed in my notice for my job and went full time on Amazon, basically. So it was all happened real quick. So that was the inception into Amazon. And back then it was, the first product was, Garcinia Cambogia. So everybody was selling this thing, right? So learned a ton. I was really green into business, didn't know much, but essentially what happened was we ran our own private label companies for probably about 6.5 years from that point. And, we spent 2014, 15 building a team of 45 staff in the Philippines and, really helping us to grow our own brands. And I've done that with a couple of business partners. We also helped run other people's companies using our systems and our team. And eventually that partnership came to an end. We had a bit of a disagreement, and essentially at that point I had like probably 4 or 5 different brands, supplement brands and so forth, because I made the mistake early on of getting too excited, right? I was like, okay, great. This is going well. I'm going to launch 3 more brands without, the infrastructure, or we had the infrastructure, but essentially my focus was split. And that taught me a big lesson in business. So when the partnership actually, came to an end, I was there trying to catch these 3 or 4 brands and all these plates, that were falling in. Eventually, ultimately, a couple died, a couple done okay, but it was a huge lesson for me in focus, basically. So that was my kind of background, how I got started, and then about 4 years ago, we kind of stumbled across the idea of acquiring the assets of Amazon businesses, because I actually had some of my friends asking me, "Hey, look, do you have an old, Amazon store that you don't use anymore?" And then we sold these, and then we started helping others do the same. So that was kind of and that's kind of what we do now. So we acquire and then we turn around and we sell Amazon stores from business owners who don't use them, and we sell them on to companies that are looking to fast track their growth on the Amazon platform.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, what a journey! Congrats, and it's funny. Yeah, I remember also that people moment just to relate with you when I took the decision of going all in and into my Amazon journey. It was very scary, but at the end of the day, I think it's all about if you have a name in life of things that you want to achieve for yourself in terms of business and also the lifestyle. I guess that's why you also took the decision of becoming an Amazon seller. Then I guess if you do things right, which we all know is difficult, it's not easy. But if you follow the methodology and you find the right products and all of that, you definitely can have a very big success when it comes to selling on Amazon. I think the reason why I mentioned this as my next point is because all this is perfect and all this, of course, can go very well. But if you don't have the right account, which in this case, the assets, this can be a much more difficult process, because I have so many people that come to me. They have an amazing idea. They have an amazing product. But for some reason or they don't able to open an account, or they don't able to get ungated, or they're not able to find a specific they're not able to basically open their gates to that specific market. And that's I think where you guys come in with e-com stores, because and I'm sure you're gonna talk about this. I think especially more now than ever, Amazon is making it so tough to get ungated in certain categories. And I think another picture which it will be also to learn from you will be also from the wholesale side, because we all know that sometimes the feedback of the account and the store and the history of the account is very important to buy to win the buy box, which is super important as a wholesaler as well. So let's start first, I guess, from this perspective of people that buy accounts when it comes to the ungating side of things. Like, is that something you see more than ever, like people buying an account just because of that, or what is the main purpose lately that you've been seeing?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. So if I can just use an analogy or a metaphor to explain what we're talking about, and touching on what you just said, is if we say that winning on Amazon is kind of like winning a race. The only difference is many people can win the race, and there's not just one winner. But to win a race, you need two things, really. You need great drivers. So in this example, the drivers are the products you sell, the systems, the team you have, the capital you have to launch the business and the brand, all critical in any business, right? You need good drivers. And the other thing you need is a good vehicle. And in this analogy, the vehicle is the actual Amazon store itself, because not all Amazon stores are created equal. So a lot of the older stores are grandfathered into a lot better features than the new stores. For example, a lot of the older stores have faster payment cycles. Some of the really old stores, they pay out in full every single day. These are legacy.
Crazy,
these are like before 2006. You can press a button in the store and it spits out your cash in full, no reserves. The next day, it's if you think about that compared to a store which is new, the cash flow cycle, you get paid in full every 3.5 weeks to get the full amount from Amazon.
It gets you.
It's like over 20 times the cash flow cycle. So you can imagine it's what that can do for a business. It's hard to compete if your competitors have got a cash flow cycle that pays you out 20 times faster than yours, right? So that's just one example. Them daily pay stores are really rare, but there's stores that pay every 7 days or every 14 days. So if Amazon owed you 100,000, let's just say, then you'd get that full 100,000 after 14 days. Versus if you have what we call a reserve store where they hold your money, it will take you about 23, 24 days to receive that full 100 grand, which slows down the growth of the business. You can't, you don't have that money to reinvest into PPC, into inventory, into hiring team, so like compound interest compounds over time, you know, so does having a faster cash flow cycle. So, you know, you buy inventory, you sell the inventory, the money comes back around into your account faster, and that compounds because you can reinvest and it grows over time. I hope that makes sense in terms of the
makes
cash
sense.
flows.
Yeah, cash flow, and thank you so much for pointing that out. That's even something I didn't thought when asking the question, because that's true. Like, I forgot, like, some of the legacy accounts have faster basically payment time frames when it comes to withdrawing the money, and that's key. Like, we see more and more, especially now when it comes to scaling your Amazon brand, that cash flow is king from the because basically what you have to understand, and I'm sure you can then elaborate on this, is like, if you have any issues when it comes to cash flow, first of all, you're not going to be able to pay your suppliers on time to start producing the second batch of inventory. Then if you don't produce the second batch of inventory enough on time, you go out of stock. If you go out of stock, then you need to position your products again. That means more money towards PPC, and it's a vicious cycle over and over again, just because you don't have the money fast enough. So it makes total sense that somebody will pay the premium to go to some of these legacy accounts, because just from the perspective of, you make this investment once, but then you forget about having this issue in the future, is a huge advantage among your competition, which I see on a daily basis. They're struggling because of the time it takes from Amazon to pay. And not only that, the reserve, which, let's be honest, the reserve sometimes is it can be so random that it's difficult for you to really make any sense about how much money you're gonna get.
Yeah, it fluctuates, as you know. When you create a new store, the Amazon essentially don't trust you yet, and that's as expected. So the reserves are really intense. So I mean, that's what really slows the growth of any company, right? If the slow the cash flow cycle is the geeky term is a cash conversion cycle, right? So the faster the cash conversion cycle in any business, the faster it can grow. You know, if the capital is redeployed. And yeah, what we see is some of the, you know, some of the higher kind of level sellers that have multiple brands and they have multiple companies, they essentially have multiple established stores across these brands, so they can stagger their cash flow cycles, you know, a few days apart. So if anything happens, you know, for example, Amazon, they put your account under review. As we know, Amazon have a habit sometimes of doing crazy things. Then that really helps cash flow keep rolling and coming into across the portfolio of businesses. You know, and that's without having to go and have a short-term payday loan, which there are some great solutions out there, but oftentimes the fees actually compound as well with these services, which can be expensive, and it just eats your margin, you know, in the business. And that's why some folks essentially acquire these, because it's like, you know, you acquire it once, and then that's a gift that keeps on giving, essentially, because it's just, instead of paying ongoing fees, that compound.
Of course. Yeah. Now, I think another reason, which goes a little bit back to my first question, is regarding the gated categories, because we know how difficult that can be, and I'm sure a lot of people that come to you, they want to buy an account from the mere basically a point that otherwise they will spend so much time into getting this engaged because of the extra paperwork, and also combined with the fact of having to open the account in the first place, and of that is a lot of hassle. So tell me a little bit, what are some of the main categories you see being very attractive when it comes to this? Like, this be more on the supplement space, or on the cosmetics? Like, what are some of the, just out of curiosity, what are some of the hottest categories people are looking to find on gated accounts, basically?
Yeah, great question. It really depends on the model. So we work with private label sellers, we work with wholesale sellers, you know, really across the board, and it depends on you know, what they're after. But you're absolutely right. Some of the, you know, some of these older stores, just because they're grandfathered in, they've got access to literally thousands of more subcategories in terms of ungated, and, you know, thousands of brands that new accounts are restricted in. Talking to the wholesale seller, really, in this point, it's well, if you've got access to a restricted amount of categories and brands, and that means opening a new store will give you access to kind of the limited amount of categories and brands. So oftentimes when everybody's trying to sell the same product, the margins are smaller. And then what that means is there's less profitable products to sell, makes it hard to get traction on Amazon. And that's one of the biggest challenges. So oftentimes these ungated stores that are grandfathered in often comes again with thousands more subcategories and brands. So sellers can find profitable products, hit the ground running, and have less competition on these ASINs and winning products, so they can hit momentum, and start growing their company. So yeah, we get requests for a lot of grocery, supplements is a big one. A lot of PPE equipment as well in some cases.
Exactly.
But yeah, it really ranges depending on kind of what products they have access to and what they kind of want to sell.
Yeah, and I think that strategy alone is very clever, because essentially what you're doing by buying one of these super difficult categories to get engaged, you remove a ton of competition that not all these other wholesalers cannot sell that product. And just the investment alone of buying this account in the first place is completely worth it, because then by spreading the cost on the fact that now you have a huge margin because you're the only one controlling the buy box is like a no-brainer, right? So I'm sure that's a very smart way to start your wholesaler journey, because I agree, like we have this conversation with a lot of wholesalers, and they're struggling sometimes because the new accounts, they give you very limited access to what you can really resell and the brands. And then you start competing among the same community, because let's be honest, and this, the wholesale community, they start using the same network of distributors and all of that. And at the end of the day, everybody has the same pricing and stuff. But having access to these unique categories is very smart. Now, that's on the category and the engaging. I think another interesting thing is regarding the inventory side of things, right? Because we also know that some of these older accounts, they are not as limited as the new ones that pretty much they pretty much only allow you to send 10 products and you are already at capacity. So tell me a little bit about that, how people are also using this strategy of buying stores to be clever with inventory capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. As you touched on, can be a big constraint to the businesses. Okay, I'm sending in 10, 20 units or a tiny shipments at a time. The logistics of that weigh heavy on the team. The margins go down, and it's just is not efficient as a business standpoint, especially if you've got winning products that you can really sell. So oftentimes the stores that are kind of got history and track record, then so for example, we have stores that we find that have millions in sales or tens of millions in some cases, and stores that might only have a couple of 100,000. But because of that track record with Amazon, when you start making sales inside of the store, the IPI store, the IPI score, should I say, and the inventory capacity limits can be increased generally a lot faster than a brand new store where Amazon do not trust you yet, right? So that really, the reason people do that, of course, is more margin. They can scale their brand quicker, or their wholesale business. This is a big one for both private label and wholesale sellers. So really, they can make more capital, make more sales and profit, and more momentum. And all of this kind of acts like if you think of like a flywheel, right? All these different things added together really create a competitive edge on the platform against other sellers who just, to use that analogy again, they might just have a slower vehicle than yourself. So yeah.
Good. Now, on top of that, and that's something I briefly touched also when I was doing the intro of regarding some of the main perks of buying a new store, is the buy box side of things. Because we all know that the buy box is also heavily driven on the history of the account, the feedback amount, and all that kind of things. So what is some of the behavior you see when it comes to that as well? Like, is there a specific, and when I say behavior, is basically around the criteria. When it comes to buy box, is there a specific amount of years or a specific amount of feedback that is very key to hit in terms of a threshold to actually say, okay, this one's gonna give me a good buy box performance? Do you have some high level guidelines when it comes to that? Like, what would be an account with good buy box performance, if you can share them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, we don't have this, as you probably guess, it's not an exact science, right? It's always
exactly.
tough.
Of course.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't ever feel comfortable saying this is the frame,
Yeah.
because with Amazon, it's such a complex and sensitive
Yeah.
beast. It's hard to really know exactly. But from what we see and from why folks acquire these stores, as a general, that the higher the seller feedback, the more trust that Amazon give that store, right? And do you have a history of delivering on your promises to Amazon's customers? That's reflected in the seller feedback score, amongst other metrics, right? So the higher the seller feedback, the higher the chance that you're going to win the buy box and have more buy box share amongst competitors. So again, coming back to that flywheel analogy, we just a side note, we had a store which had 200,000 seller feedback, and it was like 60 million in sales in total. And
crazy.
It's a couple of things to note on this. When you've got that level of seller feedback and trust, you're going to receive more buy box share versus other competitors. But another thing we've found out is, if you're selling a wholesale, brands will leave your seller account alone more often than not if they look at their listing and they see 10 companies that have really low seller feedback and bad rates, versus a seller that's got thousands of seller feedback positive. They don't, from our reports from our clients, they don't get hit with, hey, get off our listing, and IP complaints and all that stuff, because they're like, well, this seller account,
it's a real seller, like a reputable distributor or reseller. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so that's what we see in the wholesale arena with the seller feedback.
Interesting.
But ultimately, it comes down to, as well, when you open a new store, again, Amazon don't trust you. Your reserves are there's different tiers of reserves. You have to earn your trust over time. And what that means is, oftentimes if you're looking to scale out the gate and you know how to run an Amazon business, or you're looking to hit the ground running, Amazon can put restrictions on the store, velocity reviews. They want to review your store invoices and review your supply chain. All this can really throw a big speed bump in the how fast you can grow your business. Could take an extra 6-12 months to Amazon to trust you enough to be able to ramp up to the levels you want. And that 6-12 months of to open the store, get it ungated, have enough trust by Amazon for them to not put you in review, the limited sales you can do until you're out of they're kind of gradually ramping sales up, so you're not raising any red flags. It can take 6 to 12 months, and from what we've seen, in that's 6 to 12 months of lost sales and profit, essentially. So
yeah, very good. Yeah, super important. Yeah, I agree. Like, that's why at the beginning I was doing the analogy with your store. Like, of course, that is super important to have the right vehicle, because even if you do the right things as a seller, but you don't have the right vehicle, it's gonna be tough. And all the things that impact the vehicle is the things you just mentioned. So it's key. Now, let's talk a little bit, because now we have already mentioned the benefits, but let's talk about the whole process, because I'm sure some people might be a little bit afraid, because they basically don't know how the process works, about how this works. They might think, oh, if I buy an account for another person, is that legal? Could I get suspended? Is that safe? So can you clarify those points for all the ones listening and watching? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's a really common question, and essentially, how we acquire and sell these assets of businesses is no different to aggregators of how they buy a 7- and 8-figure company. So our process is fully legal and compliant with Amazon's terms of service, and everything's done so there's a legal chain of title from the ownership of the assets, just as if it was a 7- or 8-figure company being bought. Essentially, our process is just a lot shorter, because it's just the store itself that's being acquired. So That's a common question, and there's so many misconceptions around. Oh, can we sell a business on Amazon? Amazon allow thousands and thousands of businesses to be bought and sold every single year on their platform, and Amazon are very okay with that. You know, that's why they've got whole teams dedicated to supporting aggregators and so forth. They know their platform's got some catching up to do in terms of you know, the challenges that sellers can face on the platform when they're owning multiple business. So that's something I think they're actively working on. But in terms of the process, we've since I think 3.5, 4 years, we've bought, sold, and transferred over 1,500 Amazon stores to date. So we just make sure they're done right every time and follow Amazon's terms of service when doing so. So
very good.
So that's kind of the process. But yes, no different to an aggregator buying a 7-8.
Nice. And now another question people may have, especially if maybe I already some of the listeners and the ones watching already have an account and they might want a second account for wholesale purposes or a second brand. Like, can you also clarify that point? Because I know people is always afraid about the fact of having a second account and so on. And I know, of course, that's allowed, but there are some, of course, conditions when it comes to that. So could you also clarify that part? Like, because I'm sure, like, even if you're already a seller, you can buy another account. It's just that sometimes people they don't really know how it works and what things to consider. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's again another one of Amazon's confusing guidelines, because things change and people have mixed experience in opening a new store or acquiring a store. So Amazon, as you know, allow you to have as many stores as you want, providing there's a valid business reason, right? That's why some aggregators might have 500 different
exactly
stores. So that's an extreme example, but to land the point, you can have as many as you want, and provided that there's that valid reason. I think they're becoming more relaxed around that, because we've seen that trend over the last few years. First it was you're not allowed, and then you are allowed. You have to give them permission, and now it's like you don't have to ask for permission. So it seems like they're becoming more and more relaxed. But there's a few trains of thought. You could reach out to Amazon saying, "Hey, look, we're acquiring, we're going for a business transaction. We're acquiring this store," and request their permission. Go through that process. That's one way you can do it, and then Amazon essentially will link the two. The downside to that is, okay, well, if they're linked and then a competitor attacks my account, takes one account down, it's going to take down the other one. There's a good chance of that, and then you're left with no revenue, no sales, no income. So that is obviously kind of high risk. The other way, some people do it is they create completely separate companies, keep them siloed, use do not access the store from the same computer, IPs, browser, MAC address. Don't it's completely silo and have a moat around each store, just because they've seen what can happen if one goes down. It can take down a bunch, and it's just a nightmare for people's livelihoods, their teams. So it really depends on the company. I do think Amazon are trying to solve that and work towards fixing that, because of the work they're doing with some of the aggregators in the space. So
very good. Okay, and now to start concluding, like, can we briefly touch on what are some of the time frames when it comes to this? Like, because people might wonder, like, will this process take a month, 2 months, a few days? How does it work? Like, based on your experience, how long it takes to usually buy a store and have it on your name and fully operational?
Yeah, really good question. So, generally the process, it will take the steps is kind of, the first step is finding the right store based on the outcomes of the business owner. So sometimes we'll have them on our digital shelf, so to speak, where we'll say, okay, well, this is going to potentially get your outcomes. As soon as that's clarified, and as soon as we get the information of the new business or the business that wants to be added to the store, that as soon as we get that information, which is handled by our onboarding team, it would take about 10 to 14 business days to fully transfer the store over. in a compliant way with all of the proper steps in a legal way, and then deliver the store to the new the new owner. So 10 to 14 business days in total.
Nice, very good. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think we cover all the key points. Like we touch on the benefits, we touch on some of the challenges and the process. So I think it's pretty clear now how definitely buying an Amazon established Amazon store is definitely a very good and smart decision for a lot of the case studies we touch on. But I'm sure some people might still have some questions and want to dig further. So to conclude, can you share with us like how people can reach out to you to basically explore this opportunity further? And then as well, if they want to buy a store, like what are some of the process to kickstart that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of where you can reach out to us, you just go to www.ecomstores.com/Ecomcy.
Yeah.
So that's
good.
That's ecomstores.com/Ecomcy. And that will take you to a page where you can actually, if you've got a store that you're actually not using and you're thinking about potentially selling it, you can actually, click on one of the buttons and it will take you to a page where you can have that store evaluated and get an offer for that store. So that's what my team will take care of. You follow the steps on the page. My team will reach out, check your store out, and then make you an offer. If you're you're potentially looking to acquire an established store, so you can do the things we talked about on today's podcast, then there'll be another button on that page which will take you to that side of things where you can fill in your details. My team will reach out and walk you through the process from start to finish. So that's the two kind of choose your own adventure, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate so much for your time, first of all, for sharing your story and the wisdom of this business model. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna be intrigued now about this other phase of Amazon, about buying a store, right, and opening a store. And I'm sure a lot of people is gonna be interested. So feel free to guys use the link down below. And in the meantime, thank you, and looking forward to have you in the future again to discuss this further. Yeah, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye bye.